Hello, Blackhawks fans, and welcome into the Four Feathers podcast. It's Jonnie and Ron loose alongside me for a little Hawks happy hour. Ron, how you doing this fine Friday evening?
Johnny, I am great. We're back on the mic talking Blackhawks, and with you, my friend, happy Friday indeed. Man, it's good to be back on a microphone with you, sir. It's always a pleasure to talk Blackhawks hockey, especially with a lot going on lately, but we'll get to that here in a little bit.
Yeah, Ron, we got a lot going on. Cheers. First of all, cheers. Yeah,
Cheers.
So you got a little whiskey there. I got a little Stella Artois in my vintage Blackhawks mug here. So no other way to do Hawks happy hour. Get yourself a drink and join us on YouTube, youtube.com/ontapsportsnet. Go and check us out. Jump in the comments there because we got a lot. I think that a lot of people are going to have some thoughts on. So
yeah, we might, dare I say, ruffle some feathers, Johnny?
Yeah. You bring that up, Ron. We'll not to spoil too much, but we do have a new segment in here, Ruffle Some Feathers, and probably going to consist of some contentious topics on the show, whether it be things pertaining on the ice, talking about potential broadcast stuff. Ooh. That's in store. All right.
Elite naming, Ron, just really
listeners,
quick.
Make sure
elite naming, Johnny, of the Ruffles and Feathers.
You.
We just got to give our producer proper credit here. Sorry, I didn't.
I appreciate it. A few brewskis may have contributed to that when I was getting the creative juices flowing for that one. So I can't wait to bring that to you and plenty more Blackhawks banter here on season 4, episode 11 of the Four Feathers podcast. Before we go anywhere, though, listeners, make sure you go and check out ontapsportsnet.com. Subscribe, as I said, on YouTube so you don't miss any of our shows, and then go and check us out on social media too, Four Feathers Pod and at ontapsportsnet. So. Ron, let's jump in. Blackhawks doing a little bit of winning lately. 5 of their last 6. How does this make you feel?
I don't know, Johnny. I don't know what to feel. I tweeted at the Four Feathers account last night. I'm like, what is going on? It's weird.
Panic Black Magic.
Yeah, it's weird, man. This team is winning games. 5 out of 6. Tony and I were in attendance for the Tuesday winner against the Sabres. Like, they're playing good hockey, Johnny, and it's something, I want to elaborate on as we continue the show, but I'm going to just draw a little quick vision to the name tag here, and this is why you should watch us live on YouTube. Be sure to hit that little bell, when we go live. Luke's boys don't quit, and I think that's a big theme right now, Johnny, with how this team's playing. It's right now, though, what am I thinking? I don't think it's entirely sunk in yet.
Yeah, Ron, just first of all, on that name, I didn't even really notice it until you pointed it out. But now that you say that, it's funny how that phrase has just evolved. If you follow us over at Sox on Tap, or White Sox coverage there, obviously the Ricky's boys don't quit when Rick Renteria was still there. And then that changed and kind of died out. But then the Sox went on a good run at the beginning of that season. So then Tony's boys don't quit. A few rallies there. Obviously, he had to step down due to health issues. So then Miggy's boys don't quit when they went on that little run at the end of the 2022 season. And now here we are over in Blackhawks land with Luke's boys don't quit. No, Ron, I think that's something that we had asked for when you're talking about the essence of that. Luke's boys don't quit. We wanted to see some resiliency. We were okay with losses. We wanted to be hard fought. We wanted to see Luke Richardson's system, his mentality being instilled in the roster, in the guys that are here, even though not a whole lot of them will be around for the long haul. There still are some pieces, and you also got to establish culture.
100%. But to your point, Johnny, right? It is everything we could have asked for out of this season. I think that was one of our big themes too, right? On our opening show, right, was how does this team, who is clearly on paper severely less talented really than most teams in the NHL, how do they respond? And damn, he's got them playing good hockey. Like, even when, like you said, even when they're losing, there's, for the most part, still entertaining games. We got a little bit of a barn burner in that Kraken game amidst this streak, as that we're currently riding. But I mean, Johnny, it's so refreshing because if nothing else, yeah, damn, maybe they're waiting too long with Reichel for some people's, patience, or, we know they're going to burn it down at the deadline, and Tank Center is going to be a hell of a day for Four Feathers. But they are just continuing to play good hockey under Luke Richardson. And, knowing that this season was going to suck, That's been a huge bright spot that I severely appreciate.
Right. Yeah. I think we all can. And once again, as we've talked about it many times, you talk about this winning streak here. Obviously, 5 of the last 6 is a little unprecedented for this team because there were, many stretches of just no points at all being accumulated. Now they're not only just accumulating some points, but winning those games, not just like an overtime loss or something. But with that, Ron, as we've said many times, I've said it before at least 2-3 times on the show, multiple more times on social media, and I'll say it again right here for our listeners of this particular episode. If they're doing too much winning for your liking, wait until after the trade deadline, and it's going to fall off. What do we say, Ron? Let's talk just really quick about our interaction, and S. Cokes was in there too, with us in the Twitter interaction last night, and you had quoted me on that with wait until after the deadline thing, and I had said they will not win more than 5 games after the trade deadline. Book it. So that's my prediction, Ron. What do you think? You had a little more bold one there.
I said 2. I would be shocked if they win more than 2 games.
Oh,
they're gonna be bad, dude.
I don't know.
They're gonna be bad.
Even when you're bad, man, there's a few things. All it takes is little flippy stuff.
In fairness, before this streak, Johnny, they were at 8. For the whole damn season, they were at 8. Like 2 to me does not seem unrealistic. I think their over under for the season was like 19. So they could literally win 2 games after that deadline, especially if all of Kane, Taves, Domi, Athanasi, like if Reese Johnson's playing top 6 minutes, they're 2 games, man.
I don't know. I just set it at 5 because, like I said, there's still some fluky stuff, and then you're also going to be, I'd have to go and break down the schedule. I think that's something that I'll have to do closer to the trade deadline when we approach that juncture of the season. But I would imagine there's some other teams that are doing a little bit of tanking there too. So you may not even want to win the game, but it may just happen. So that's why I kind of set my number at 5 there, but we'll see. We'll do the math. We'll see who's closer. If it's somewhere in the middle there, I think that's also a possibility as well. So we shall see. But let's talk a little bit about this streak here and some themes on there. Winning homestand, Ron, was nice for the fans because it's tough, and we're in the dead days of winter, as I'd said a couple of episodes here. So going 4-3 on that stretch, kind of they were home right after the new year for a bunch of those, and I know there's a line like we just talked about with people saying, oh no, we got to lose these. We got to tank. We got to make sure we get that, best odds there. But at the same time, there's things that you can take away positively from those wins. And then also going to the UC, like we said at the beginning of the season, go in, you want to see a win when you show up at the United Center, right?
Yeah, I mean, we it's one thing to understand the objective of the season, Johnny, but it's another thing to not still appreciate your team winning hockey games. Like that is the purpose of why you play. And yes, obviously, sometimes you have to take losses in order to incorporate wins. It's just the ebbs and flows of the sports industry. But it just feels good when they win one. It really is. It's a lot of fun. And Johnny, fun fact: I am 2-1 at the United Center in person this year.
Ooh.
I have a winning record at the UC right now. That feels pretty good because, when you do go again, it's one thing to be at home and watching it on TV and they lost, damn, whatever. But when you're there and they win and there's a buzz in the UC that's been very absent over the last 6-7 years, it's really nice to see that, Johnny.
Yeah, no, I believe I'm 1-3, so you got me beat there. I was at the home opener for that win against Detroit, and then I was also in attendance for the debacle on the Saturday night game with all those goals let up in the first period. So, we're going to get to that, but at the end of the show because I have another thing that I'm going to tie into it in our final thoughts. I think Chicagoans will be able to appreciate it. But otherwise on this, obviously, after the homestand, it went out to Philly, where they had a real long regular season losing streak there. Obviously, playoffs not counted in that. We'll get to something related to those playoffs in a little bit here, but snapping that road losing streak there at Philadelphia just seems like a tough building. Every time we've gone out there, I feel like we always get like the Saturday afternoon matchup that's like noon our time, 1 theirs, and we're just never ready to play. But that wasn't the case. Went out there on a Thursday night and got it done. It was Mrazek keeping him in. He earned first star honors, made 37 saves in that game. And then some nice fourth line magic. You saw Reese Johnson getting the game winning goal there. And then, icing it off with Kurashev empty netter. And then there's some Tyler Johnson rock star zone activity there, Ron. So overall, a nice way to kick off the weekend because the weekend does start on Thursday.
Yes, it does, and that is one of our four feathers rules there, Johnny. But yeah, man, just going back to what this team, and kind of where we're at here, Johnny, just in the tankathon. First off, I just did a couple sim lotteries. You don't want to know the results.
Well, that's because we're in the third spot right now, so we have the
right,
lowest odds of those top three, technically, as entering play Friday. And there's only two
right.
NHL games tonight, so I don't think anyone will be making any movement at that.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I think it just goes to support, right? Like, they're they're playing okay enough, but they're still playing bad, Johnny. But yeah, man, I mean, on top of it too, right? You said you were there on Saturday. I was, there on Tuesday, and we're gonna talk about that here too in a little bit, Johnny. But I don't know, man. It's one of those things right now, and they are where they are.
Yeah, but we'll see. Like I just mentioned there with Tankathon, you doing your sim lotteries there, Ron. But the Blackhawks, they were in that top spot there with the best odds, 18.5%. They've now dropped down there in the third slot there behind the Jackets, who hold that top spot, and the Ducks are second. So, like I'd said a couple episodes ago, go Jackets, go Ducks. Hope they win there, so then we can, get some more tanking in, and then maybe enjoy sprinkled in a win here or two there for the morale purposes, while still not damaging the tank outlook. So we'll see what happens because there will be some road games coming up, a little tough stretch. We'll get to that later. But Ron, over the stretch of winning, one thing that has helped propel them there is the play of Seth Jones. He is, playing much more assertively. I think getting the All-Star nod is kind of a formality because every team has to have one. I feel like he's really upped his game since then. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, it really did, Johnny. I think maybe make him feel appreciated for, being here and probably going to be here through the full rebuild. But he has really stepped up, and Tuesday was a perfect example of that, Johnny, as you have here in our lovely rundown. A 3-point game, that's stepping up. Like, especially right now,
In clutch
again,
time, too.
right. Yes, exactly. And it's one thing when guys like Taves and Kane aren't playing well. Nobody's really scoring this year. But even just over this streak, that's what we wanted to see out of Seth Jones, right? You say it all the time, Johnny. This is what we want to see out of him from an
Right.
offensive standpoint. If he's going to be that big contract, keep playing like it. But absolutely agree with you. Ever since that All-Star nod, it feels like he's got that little pep in his step again, and is playing some really good hockey.
Yeah, I think it's been a motivator for him because there's a story that came out shortly after that the first wave of All Stars was announced, and obviously he was included as the Blackhawks default selection there. He had talked with Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times, and he had said that it's not lost on me that it's kind of a hollow honor. So I do think there's some motivation factor there. And then speaking to the point that you just finished off with there, you paid that contract. We've talked about it multiple times. I want to see more goals from Seth Jones, right? I think even Caleb, his brother, outscored him last year, and they had like a bet going in there. I wanted Seth to shatter that, and I know Caleb's been a little in and out himself this year, so not as many opportunities, but I want to see him do that. And doing 2 goals, got the tying goal late in the third period, and then in overtime. Granted, a little bit of a broken play and maybe a little bit of a help from some shoddy transition defense by the Sabres there, but either way, they don't ask how, they ask how many, which we do here at Four Feathers Podcast, and he got 2 of them. Made it a 3-point night, adding a helper in there as well. So that was encouraging to see. He's playing just more like the force that he can be, because when you have that physical stature there, Ron, he's like 6'4", right? I want to say he's very fluid in how he skates. He can be powerful if he wants to. We've seen him body off some guys. I just want to see that more, right? Because if you are that big money guy, let's see it. Be the noticeable guy every night. Oh, yeah. You could tell. Number 4 is the guy that we pay a lot of money to, but you'll see him all over the ice. That's what you want to be able to say. Maybe a casual fan sitting beside you in the 300 level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to see him play up to his potential. There's a reason he got the big contract. I mean, the guy is a good defenseman. Sure, you can make the argument maybe that they overpaid for him or what have you, but nonetheless, this is a guy that you have marked as a franchise essentially player right now because he's your highest paying contract for the longest time. He's got to step up. He's got to do more of what he's doing. And again, like you said, 6'4", he's huge. He can move. Like, dude, use that physique. That is rare for a lot of defensemen in the NHL, especially guys that can score, right? It's one thing for the big bruisers and some of the stay-at-home guys to be big, but when you're a big guy and you got that offensive touch, you got to use it, man.
Right. Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, Ron, last topic on Seth Jones here. I saw an article today. I didn't really read too much of it, but the headline kind of got me thinking. And I think it's been a thought that's been swirling around some of the Blackhawks fan base. But it was, Seth Jones setting up for potentially being a future captain of the Blackhawks. And when I thought about that, I was thinking about the circumstances surrounding it. And I think it would, at first, my thought was it would be completely circumstantial because, Taves is going to go. So there's your current captain gone. Oh, he's here for the long haul. You can't move that contract. So by default, he's going to be here. He's one of the top. He's going to be the top paid guy on the team. Say Kane and Taves go. And then he's obviously already got an alternate role. You transition, step that up. If you're going to name him the captain, even if you do a period of just alternates for a while. So feels like another thing, like the All-Star honor, maybe a little hollow. Is it that deserved? So I want to see more leadership from him. And I don't think it's his personality too much to be the rah-rah guy. Maybe it's a little different. Granted, I'm not in the locker room when they're having intermission talks or talking about adjustments or what needs to be motivated, who's saying what on the bench. But he just doesn't seem like that guy, that fiery guy. So sorry if it's not your personality, but you're going to have to show it a little bit more if he does want to eventually win that role. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I agree, Johnny. And you could even almost take another little spin on it too, right? And it's like, sure, not every captain is a vocal captain. We've seen that across numerous sports. Sometimes the quiet guy can get the job done, but you got to lead by example. And that is the biggest thing, right? Sure, maybe he's a voice in the locker room in terms of that veteran leadership to younger guys, kind of a guy that people can look up to. Dare I say, one of your favorite teams, Johnny, kind of that Jose Abreu role in the Chicago White Sox, where he's not the loudest guy, but he's well respected because of how he plays. I think that goes back into your point of needing to see Seth Jones step up more in his just offensive and hockey game. Maybe that will help with that leadership because, again, Taves was kind of that way when he first started as captain. He got more fiery as his career went on. But I think early when he was a little timid as a young captain, but he just led by example because he was consistent. He went out there. He played hard. If Seth Jones can even do that, Johnny, and then be that well-respected voice in the locker room, I think he can then garnish that leadership role and it won't be so hollow. But again, you still need to see more of it. Either you're stepping up as a rah-rah guy, like you said, Johnny, and I think is an absolutely fair point, but also, are you stepping up and showing it in your play on the ice?
Yeah. Right. 100%. So I think that's a good discussion on that. Obviously, we will dog ear that because it's going to be a little bit until we have any movement on that front. I wouldn't even be surprised if the Blackhawks win a season more, maybe without a captain, if Jonathan Taves does end up going at the deadline. So we'll check back in on that as it develops. All right, Ron, it's time to ruffle some feathers. And this is the big topic of this show tonight. And it is the Chris Vosters debate. Ron, it got a little heated last night because there was an instance, I'll share it in a second here, that didn't really sit well because it was very important Blackhawks moment being referenced, and it was referenced wrongly by Chris Vosters. So scenario was, it was in the first period, and Patrick Kane had a shot that he was trying to go high on in the game against Philadelphia. He was trying to get it top shelf, elevate over a blocker or a glove of Carter Hart. And Chris Vosters was commentating it, and he had said, Kane, obviously we're in the building at Philadelphia there, Wells Fargo Arena, where that 2010 Stanley Cup was. Kane trying to go top shelf like that winner that he had for the Blackhawks Stanley Cup in 2010. And I thought, I was like, wait, did he really just say that? Did he really just say top shelf? And it seems like minuscule on the surface, right? Oh, what does it matter if it was top shelf? What does it matter if it was, if it was like a normal shot and maybe just kind of like in the middle of the net and 7-hole or whatever, and he said top shelf, maybe not as big of a deal. But the reason that goal is so iconic, Ron, is because no one knew what the hell happened. Doc Emmerich didn't even know how to call it at the time, right? The whole reason, obviously, we know after replay, seeing the overhead view, seeing the on-ice view, seeing the fan view from the side right there by where Kane was on the half wall, it was low, went through the pads so quickly that it got stuck under that white covering by the net, and it got wedged under there, and you couldn't see it from the side view. And that was very clearly a low goal. It was low on the ice. Didn't even leave the ice. Shit. It was on the ice the whole way. It was not top shelf, and it was an iconic moment in Blackhawks history. Broke the drought that they had of Stanley Cups. Finally brought Lord Stanley back to Chicago, started the dynasty, and it just feels, when you hear that, Pat Foley would never mess something like that up. I know it's hard to compare to him, and we'll let you have your air on that, Ron.
Sure.
But it's kind of a slap in the face to Blackhawks fandom. it really, that's what it felt like to me. And I think that's why it kind of sparked some backlash. And I, like I said, it was just a moment in the broadcast, but the bigger overall sort of aura of it is what kind of got to me. It's like, is this guy really the right guy? Is he really dialed into the Blackhawks? Because you knew Pat Foley always was.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll agree there, Johnny. I'm not going to totally let him off scotch-free. I know everybody's probably like, "Oh, you like him so much, so you'll defend him endlessly." No, it's definitely a moment that you, as the Blackhawks broadcaster, should know, right, and know inside and out. And there's this type of kind of elegance to broadcasting, Johnny, because he does a lot of games, right? He has done college, right, at the collegiate level, especially for the Big Ten Network. You probably heard him a lot on those Friday nights, Johnny, when we were doing Four Feather shows over the last handful of years. He's done tons of other sports as well. And I think that is something, Johnny, where it goes into broadcasting is this whole unique thing, right? Because you're narrating the action on the playing surface, just period, whatever it is, no matter the sport, and you're telling a story. And it's really easy to walk into another building and call a game without being a fan. And I think that's the part, right, where maybe this is my call of like, give this guy a chance because he grew up just over the border in Wisconsin, so Blackhawks were the local team. But
so you're telling me he's a Wild fan?
God, I hope not. I really hope not. I really hope not. But again, maybe like it wasn't as relevant, right? Because like us, it's in our backyard and whatever. I think he's still kind of learning how to become that fan because that's what Pat Foley was, right? Pat Foley's the Chicago kid, grew up, going to games, grew up a Cubs fan here in Chicago, right? Like Pat Foley was from here. And so like he was almost one of our own because he truly was a diehard longtime fan. And even something I have noticed, Johnny, for games I call, I'm a fan because I call games for where I went to school. So I am a fan. So I get that investment in it, recall some memories, different things like that. He has to give that. And I think that's something he's still learning as a new broadcaster specific to a team is you just have to give your energy into it and become a fan. Because once you become a fan, then that's how you become a Pat Foley. Or in the eyes of White Sox fans, that's how you become a Hawk Harrelson. Or that's how you become a Harry Carey. Or that's how you become one of these legendary broadcasters that for a specific team becomes so beloved because they are at their core a fan. They want their team to win. And I think he's still learning how to do that because he was a national broadcaster. He had to be impartial. He had to divest his energy to a fault away from being that diehard fan of the team that he's calling for. So again, I think it is a very much, understandable why Blackhawks fans got upset about that. And that is a tough, we'll call it a mistake because that's what it was, right? You spoke on what the play actually was. He's got to give himself to become a fan because I bet you right now, if he does, everybody's narrative of, oh, this guy stinks, blah, 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 is going to quickly go away, right? It's quickly going to become, oh, okay, this guy's invested now. We feel that investment. I think he's still trying to learn that because that does take time and adjustment, Johnny. But I understand why everybody's upset, but I think everybody jumping down his throat and calling for him to be off of TV at this very second moment is a bit over the top.
I'll go with you. I appreciate your perspective from having to call games yourself there. That it's very important, I think, to take into consideration. And then also, I said it in the thread tweet is just kind of a kind of overreaction at the time because that's what we do here. But I would also agree with you that the calls for him to be fire Vosters now, all of that. I'm not there. I'm not at that point yet. But I will say, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I'm giving him a chance. And I know that it's a process, but it is hard to listen to at times. So I would be lying to myself if I just said, oh, yeah, it's fine. I can dismiss everything because,
Sure.
It's okay. but it is hard to listen to sometimes. There's some nights where I'd rather just flip on the radio and sync it up and mute my TV. So that's just my reaction to it at times. There's multiple like layers to it. Obviously, that was kind of the big attention grabbing thing, referencing the Kane goal incorrectly that we just talked about. But another thing, Ron, I want to bring up, I don't know if you were able to see the open at all on the game last night. Pat Foley was always very eloquent in his opens. I'd hate to keep going back to it, but you knew it was time for Blackhawks hockey because Pat Foley would have this kind of already scripted game plan of how he was going to bring in the broadcast. Well, it sounds like Chris Vosters is flying it, doing it, fuck it, I'll write it and we'll do it live, Bill O'Reilly kind of style last night. And Troy Murray wasn't having any of it. I don't know if you saw, he didn't even know what to say back to Chris. He said, "Oh, really? That's how we're going to open?" And that chemistry is not there yet. And I know it takes time to build chemistry, but it doesn't seem like they're actually clicking. Usually you would see some moments of that there. I feel like there's still too much of a divide there. And sure, sometime may be able to mend that a little bit, but I don't know if their styles gel really well. So it's a tough listen at times. And that's another reason for it. And Troy's not going to slam his partner on the air, right? I know he's going to have, there's like that little like hiccup, and it's probably innocent on Troy's part in terms of just, maybe like caught off guard a little bit and all of that. And he's not intentionally trying to like sabotage Vosters there, but it wasn't even like natural at all. You know what I'm saying? So, and it just feels like, I don't know if this guy and Troy Murray can work together in the booth. I feel like it's a temporary setup and there's going to have to be a change one way or the other down the road. So I don't know about you, thoughts on awkward interactions like that, because that's not the only one that's happened.
Yeah, and you know what? I think some of that too is Johnny is maybe a bit of mishandling on the part of the Blackhawks, right? Because just like anything in life, it has to have a balance. It has to work. It has to have chemistry. Being a broadcast partner with somebody in a lot of ways is like being in any kind of relationship, a friendship, a marriage, engagement, etc., where you gotta click. It's gotta work in order for it to be good and it to, be enjoyable for the fan at home that's listening. And I think it's a bit of mistreatment on the part of the Blackhawks, Johnny, because it's great if you want to give Troy Murray the TV time, because I think he does deserve it. He's fantastic. He's a team legend that, again, we were spoiled in Chicago with two of the best color analysts in hockey on radio and television, respectively, in the forms of Murray and Eddie O. It's great if you're going to do that, but then if you're going to do that, I almost feel like you can't break the chemistry. Also, nice hashtag crack 'em with the Stella there, Johnny, and a couple more green bottles on the live shows here with Four Feathers. We love to see it, but I think if they go into that point, Johnny, if we want to give Murray that TV time because we think he deserves it, then put Weideman on TV too, because those guys have the chemistry. They've been together for forever.
Yeah, he's done a few one-offs, and I liked it. It's interesting. Yeah.
And like that's, Weideman's a talented enough broadcaster where TV to radio is not a huge switch for him. Like he might be a little more over descriptive than your natural TV guy because that's what you have to be on radio. But like he's still going to call the game eloquently, and they're going to work. They're going to mesh because they've done it for so long. Pat Foley and Eddie Olczyk did that for a long time together here in Chicago, right? Like there are guys that gel better with others. But I think in this case, Vosters is kind of this new school broadcaster where maybe some things are a little more, because, right, like the natural content is so popular nowadays. People just being themselves. More broadcasters are trying to bring personality to it while still trying to be professional. And for guys that are still that OG kind of professional, it's hard to get that adjustment. Really is with some of these guys. Like if you watch them, and I know a lot of people hate him because they just don't like the guy, but the best chemistry in the booth with Vosters is Colby Cohen. And those two work really well off of each other and can go back and forth.
Ooh,
it is
a tough sell, Ron. I'm just going to let you know right now.
No, and that's fair.
Tough sell.
And that's fair. But more my point being, like, if you were going to want Vosters as your guy, like, you either he has to call all games on TV. And then if you want to give John and Troy a TV night, he just gets a night off if he's doing like national or something. Like you let him go do national for a couple games type thing to do the transition. You got to let him just have a guy. Let it be Sharp all the time if that's going to be the case.
Because I will say, I think it's been a little bit better with Sharp than with Troy.
Well, but they're both going into the booth together and learning and growing together. And that's what's going to, I think, help them in this situation specifically, Johnny. And, you know, it doesn't work for everybody. And, you know, I've had the pleasure of, you know, being color on football games for SXU with two different play-by-play guys. And I gel really well with both of them, but it's two very different relationships, right? One was very like, it was professional, it was cut and dry, right? Like it was, you know, hey, we're professional partners here. You know, we get the job done. We got it. Boom, 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 boom. But my other play-by-play is actually one of my good friends. I talk to him every single day. So him and I on a microphone, my whole goal every broadcast is to make him laugh on the broadcast and to screw him up because he's very professional. He takes his job very seriously. And he calls games for an arena football league team. So like he's up there. He's doing big things. But like, I'm breaking you because that's just the relationship we had, and that was fun, and people enjoy it and have given us that feedback. That's the biggest key, Johnny, is the chemistry. And I think in this situation, the awkward open is a result of, yes, maybe they're not meant to be together. And it's a little bit of criticism toward both of them, perhaps, just because of how they do things. But that's also on the Blackhawks to identify that and make the right move then. It's either got to be, in my opinion, John and Troy, because it's John and Troy, and everybody knows them in Chicago, or it's got to be Vosters and whomever his color guy is going forward, you know, once Troy retires or whatever. Like that's what it's got to be, in my opinion, because otherwise you're setting them both up for failure, and that's when you get these awkward moments on the broadcast.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good assessment there, Rondi. Well, one thing that you said in the middle of that kind of caught, you know, it put on the light bulb in my head. And once again, I said, you know, tough sell when you mentioned with the chemistry possibly between
a fair criticism.
Talking about though between Colby Cohen and Chris Foster, I agree that it would probably be the better chemistry there. But then the problem for me stems further than that because of not to like rag these guys personally, but their sense of humor, Chris Foster's personal sense of humor, I don't know if that generally connects widespread to many Blackhawks fans. Like take it for example on the White Sox side of things. I'm you know a Hawk guy. I loved him, and I know you know, but that's me. I'm the South Sider. You know, you listened up. He was the soundtrack to summer. All of that stuff. But when Benetti came in, a lot of guys, you know, it took like it was a little transition, but then a lot of White Sox fans have really embraced it and they love him. But now he does it because he knows the White Sox fan sort of humor, that sort of stuff. And sure, Vosters, not saying that Vosters can't grow into that as it pertains to the Blackhawks. However, I won't go and anoint Jason Benetti and put him on the same pedestal that other White Sox fans will because I don't connect with him. I don't like his sense of humor as much as other people do. There are some, don't get me wrong, there are some moments that are good and there's some jokes that are good that'll get me. And I think Chris Vosters has a few of them here and there. However, on the overall, sometimes I'm just begging for Len Kasper on the White Sox side. Right now, like last night left me begging for Pat Foley to come back miraculously sometime after like the first period to write the call for the rest of the game. It's tough because, like I said, I don't want to attack them. And this is where I just kind of have an issue with it. And I think it could be a longer term problem is because if that never settles in and there's never any kind of bond between him and the Blackhawks fan base, then it's going to be tough for him to win anybody over and stay in that post. And it's just tough for me because maybe he will grow on me a little bit, but if it's anything like the situation on the South side, that, and who knows, might get crucified for that take because there are a lot of people that really like Jason Benetti. So who knows? Hopefully I'm eating my words and Chris Foster does grow into this. But as things currently stand with the body of work I've watched, I'd say probably all but 3 games this season with the Blackhawks TV call. It's not getting it done for me right now. So that's where I'd leave that at in terms of showing personality and my just kind of issues with it. So.
Yeah, and I think that's an incredibly fair assessment, though, Johnny. Like, I don't think you're wrong by any means of feeling that way because I think a lot of fans do feel that way, and that's where I'm gonna take this down 2 forks in the road really quick because in my opinion, there's 2 ways that this improves in the future for somebody here, right? In this case, you can maybe put a little blame on the Blackhawks then, saying, do you really know your fan base? If this guy isn't gelling with your fan base, because guess what? There are great broadcasters that won't gel with a fan base. Not everybody, like, you know, you hear a lot of online, you know, celebrities and stuff. A guy I'll quote, because I'm a big fan of his, is Pat McAfee. He says, he's like, I'm not for everybody. I'm not your favorite, not everybody's favorite flavor of ice cream. You know what I mean? So it sometimes doesn't work. And maybe
and you can't please everyone. I understand. I do understand.
Of course.
I do get it.
Maybe that's on the Blackhawks front office then for making that decision and not knowing their fan base. But then again, okay, it's done and they believe in him. Then if you're Chris, the way he can, I think, improve maybe and understand how to become more well-liked, I think is to try to connect with the fans. You know what I mean? Like, be that guy on Twitter to go back and forth with fans. Do some natural engagement. Maybe go walk around the concourse if you've got 10 minutes before a game and, just kind of talk to fans and get to know them a little bit and what they like and what they don't like. And you know what I mean? And like, people might be like, oh, that's real, like, D3, that's real, juniors or minor league if he's going out and talking to the fans. No, it's not. It's connecting with the people that your product is essentially appeasing. I mean, that's what it is. People fell in love with Pat Foley because Pat Foley was a Chicago Blackhawks fan. He knew he gelled with the fan base. That's where you have to find that. And I think going back to your point about the White Sox, Johnny, I'm a Benetti fan, even though I'm a Cubs fan. I appreciate Benetti. I think he's a great broadcaster, but I totally understand why he's not everybody's favorite flavor of ice cream for a broadcast.
Right.
It's understandable. So, it really is one of those things where some of it goes on the decision makers as well, right? Like, you could have somebody that's a great employee in anything in life, but if you put them in the wrong position to succeed, you know what I mean? That's partially not necessarily always on them. And I'm not trying to sit here and be, oh, you got to give Vosters a chance. Like, if you don't want to, cool, write him off then. I don't give a damn. Well, the Hawks are going to give him a chance. You know what I mean? So it's like, I just think there's two ways this could have gone about, but it's a fair point, Johnny, because I agree. There are absolutely situations where guys won't fit their audience based on just how they are.
Right. All fair, Ron. And I just wanted to talk, you had said something about kind of like the interactivity too. I think that would be a good thing for Chris Vosters to get out there and be with the Blackhawks fans. I mean, I think, obviously I know they got to do game prep and stuff, but shit, it'd be cool to see them if they do like that, pregame live booth from like the atrium or from outside one of the 100 level sections. If Chris Vosters did a little drop by, right, and you could go and see him and talk and whatever real quick before he has to head up the elevator for the game broadcast itself. I would take time and I would actually like to go and talk to him, because I will say he does do a good job in terms of interactivity on social media. I do think his presence there is strong, and it's interesting because those are good for those platforms. I think, he shares pertinent Blackhawks information with the, maybe a twist of his own to it. And then he documents his, he's at the morning skate. If you go and watch his Instagram story or whatever. I'm not huge on TikTok, but I know he does videos of like, kind of recapping road trips or where they went, the sites that they saw around, like saying, like the stairs in Philadelphia and what have you, and the Liberty Bell and stuff like that. And then, a shot from the booth of him and Troy or whatever. That's all good and dandy, and that's good for those platforms, and that's good because that's spreading the Blackhawks brand there. However, when you go and talk about a TV audience, TikTok humor doesn't translate back to that, because you got a bunch of people that are 40 plus years old that are some of your most loyal and diehard Blackhawks fans on the planet. And they have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. So while you do want him to be himself, I think there's a line there where he's crossing over it a few too many times for my liking. And I know probably plenty of other people's likings based on the replies we got on Twitter to the whole start of this debacle last night.
Yeah, and Johnny, I think that's a great point, honestly, because that is really kind of where I think sports media in general is going, right? Like, you can be a personality on air, but like now you also have to develop that social media for that new age fan that's coming along. All these leagues want you to do that because they're trying to garner that next generation.
It's important. However, it's not the same format. Know your platform, I guess, is what I'm talking about.
Absolutely agreed. And I think that's a learning experience on the part of everyone. I think that's a learning experience on the fan understanding where, that industry is going, on the broadcaster themselves understanding, like you said, your audience, right? TikTok versus the actual hockey broadcast. You know what I mean? Like, kind of a separation of church and state in a lot of ways. there's a lot of self-awareness moments I think that need to take place too. Also understanding with the Blackhawks, like, hey, you are going to ruffle the feathers of some of your older generation diehards because maybe again this front office's motto is we're moving on. This is the new era of Blackhawks hockey. That also is to also appeal to the new generation too. So again, I think there's so many moving avenues of there's a lot of blending that needs to occur. And I think everybody can take a little bit of blame here, including Chris himself. I really think, some of that is him understanding which platforms, whether it's the television, TikTok, Twitter, etc., what is your audience and how do you cater best to that audience to appease to everybody's desires? Because that's really ultimately at the end of the day what your job is in that profession.
Right. Yeah. I just, I wanted to bring that up because I think that is where I've heard, the word, and I think this does get overused, but people say cringe. And that's a joke that, like I said, is maybe not appropriate for the platform there, not in terms of that it's a dirty joke or inappropriate, but people aren't going to get it. People don't want to hear about, whatever the latest trend is on TikTok as, our defensemen are getting carved up for 3 goals in 10 minutes in the first period. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a separation there. I think that you had outlined that I think needs to be more defined going forward. So I just wanted to get that. I'm glad we aired all of that out, Ron. I appreciate your perspective on it, especially from the personal experience calling games. I like hearing that, but I do, Blackhawks fans, if you're upset with them, I hear you, because last night I was pretty hot. Yeah, Ron, I sent that message to you guys in the group, and obviously we go a little over the top ourselves sometimes because that's what we do. We bring you Blackhawks content, updates, and hot takes. That's our goal here at Four Feathers Podcast. However, I had said at the time, just because I was so frustrated about the 2010 reference, that fireable offense, IMO. So here on the Four Feathers Podcast, get a little heated sometimes. I don't actually think the Blackhawks should fire him on the spot, just for the record, but that's just was my reaction, and it got me hot. I know it got a lot of other Blackhawks fans hot. So hey, we're here to continue this discussion. I'd say, guess what? Whether you like it or not, he's going to be on for the rest of the season, obviously for the foreseeable future. I don't know what his exact contract is, but let's just see if he can grow. Let's see if maybe, and I'm not the kind of guy, I'm not going to go and tag him on Twitter and say, oh, you fucking suck. I'm sure there are some people that do that, right? And he's probably seen here, hopefully for his own sake, that he has those notifications filtered to get some of that shit out of there. Because I don't think that's stuff they need to see. But I do think there's some constructive criticism that can go his way there. So I would believe that, not to say that we started it, but with the amount of people that were talking about it last night, it's hard for me to believe that Chris Vosters didn't at least get word back that some stuff was going on around him last night. Let's see how he responds.
100%. And I think the response is going to be really key, Johnny, because again, the quicker that he acclimates and I think becomes that fan and really integrates with what the Blackhawks hockey community is as a whole and understanding his audience and platform, Johnny, I think there is going to be that improvement. But, I think like anybody in any profession, I bet you he's probably good with the constructive criticism. And I bet you he does kind of look at his own product and say, what can I improve on and what can I be better at? And hopefully this is a learning moment for him, because I think it's safe to say that, everybody can see the prospect of the announcer he could become as that new kind of voice of Blackhawks hockey. It's just a matter of him also being able to come to the, understanding of what he needs to do to get better. And, in the end of the day, it was a mistake, and hopefully he grows from it and continues to get better, because, broadcasting's hard, but there's a lot of elements into broadcasting. I think people that, in general in the fan base need to understand, but also things that I think Chris understands that he probably needs to work on and improve as in order to get better in the profession.
Yeah. And there's one last point here on that I don't think we really brought up. We brought it up on past I think a couple episodes ago. We didn't even know that this is going to spiral to this point, but we had talked about him a little bit, right? Because there was a little bit of talk about, potential, like what maybe there was an awkward moment like previously, but not as like, egregious outstanding as this one. But the tough situation that he's in, obviously relieving Pat Foley's, those are big shoes to step into. So you got to take that into consideration. Once again, it doesn't, completely excuse him from all mistakes that he makes, right? Still got to be held accountable. But then the play of the team on the ice, guess what? If the Hawks are romping everybody and they're looking good and we're not in the middle of a damn rebuild, you could probably put up with a little bit of subpar broadcasting. And you would, like I said, you'd just be happy the team's winning and you'd be able to, let that go. And then, there'd be a better moment that would make you gloss over the previous one if it was a little slip up or something. When the team's bad like this, you go there, and why are we tuning in? Obviously, we want to see the development. This is our team. We're going to be with them no matter what, but you're also kind of there for an entertainment value too. At the same time. So it's a tough situation for him having to be the entertainer in an unentertaining season overall for the Blackhawks. So I do want to make that just known. That's not lost on me. But
Oh no, nothing like losing Johnny in the middle of the broadcast. But like he was saying, it's certainly not lost on him either. Oh, and he's back with a vengeance. Welcome back, sir.
Dude, I accidentally swiped and it took me off the page. So I'm back. No, but I just want to say that situation's not lost on me, Ron. It's it is a tough scenario, but he does still have to navigate it no matter what it is. So I just wanted to leave that out there kind of as my last thought on this, because you do got to take into account what the team's doing, what the product you're calling is actually all about.
Yep. Absolutely agree with you, my friend.
So
well put.
All right. I think that was good on the Chris Vosters debate. We can move on from Ruffle Some Feathers. Hopefully we can have a few more topics that spark debate like that in the future. Look forward to bringing that to you on future episodes of the Four Feathers podcast. All right. Now we're talking about what to watch going forward, Ron. We got a little injury situation back up in the goalie room. Unfortunately, Alex Stalock is back in concussion protocol. Do you think Jackson Stauber possibly sees his first NHL action, given that the Blackhawks have a back-to-back coming up here on Saturday, Sunday?
Maybe. I mean, it's really possible, Johnny. And, I would also say, keep an eye on other injury updates, right? Like what if, maybe Stalock's off the report by then and things like that. But at this point, why not, Johnny? Why not give the kid a chance and see what he can do?
You got to remember, Arvid Soderblom's still on IR down with Rockford. So yeah. I know he was the one when they had the issues with obviously Stalock and protocol, and then Mrazek had another flare up with the groin earlier in the season. Soderblom saw a big share of the workload there. He's not an option right now. Then once again, that timeline should be coming up because I believe it was kind of late December when he went on. It was a 2-3 week timeline. So we should be approaching the end of that. But when you were just down at Rockford and playing in games there and ready to come back up, just thrust him right in. Okay, you're the number one guy now. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, no, for sure. I really agree. I think we're going to have to keep an eye on that Arvid Soderblom, situation, because maybe we wake up tomorrow morning and there's a roster move.
We got an update. Hey, we got an update. Soderblom is in net. He's back for the Ice Hogs then. So that's good news. All right, good to hear. But that was just as right before they left for the road trip. We knew that Stalock wasn't going on it, and Soderblom wasn't back then. So we appreciate Escokes for bringing us that information. So he's back there possibly for a call up this weekend if they don't want to go to Stauber, because Stauber's been up a few times, just never actually got in the net.
Yeah, I think he's there for emergency purposes only, Johnny. And
he's there to look cool on the bench.
Yeah, he's there to look dope, have a nice little hat on, wear his cool pads. But I agree. I think, be on the lookout. We're going to probably see Mrazek tomorrow on the road. But when they come back to the UC on Sunday, Johnny, it's probably going to be Soderblom. He'll have a day of rest in between.
Right.
He might just join the team in Chicago. Like he might not even travel with them for that game on Saturday night. So, yeah, man, but I would have liked to see the little Stauber action, but he's going to see a lot of action down in Rockford now because they're going to need a goaltender.
I think that's probably the best place for him. And obviously, I think Soderblom still needs his work down in Rockford as well. It is good, kind of like, when you're seeing Reichel and Stintz here. We're talking about forwards there, but for the goalies too, obviously Soderblom's the most highly touted right now. That's at least close. I know we've talked about Drew Comesso in the past, but he's still ways to go, obviously, with where he is. But we'll see what happens. Possibly Soderblom Sunday then could very well be a thing. All right. Other one, we talked about Seth Jones stepping up as of late. Up front, Philip Kurashev. He's looking good, Ron. What have you liked from him during this little Blackhawks sort of winning spurt here?
I like Kurashev, Johnny, because he's just kind of that all-around player that gives you a little bit of everything. He's maybe not great at anything, but he's good at a lot of things. And you need those kind of depth guys, especially hovering, probably in a perfect case scenario, he's like a third liner, maybe a four-line guy if you're really deep. But, I could see a quality third-line player. I think of like a Tomas Kopetsky role, whose jersey I wore to that game on Tuesday against the Sabres. That guy that brings a little offense, brings a little of that hardcore, forechecking, can play some defense, can kill some penalties for
got
you.
Some good speed.
Yeah, he's got some good straight line speed. Like, dare I say, I think Philip Kurashev is turning into a, dare I say, like maybe that next great like Blackhawks role player that we're gonna see as a part of the future. Like he's never gonna be great, but he's becoming, he's showing that flair, and we've seen some of that from him. Um, but yeah, I like what I'm seeing from him because I feel like when he's playing well, that's a guy that I think we could sit here down the stretch later in the season and go, we can watch his development the rest of the year and try and pick up something out of it.
I just need to see it more consistently because that second line goes when he goes. Everybody has to play a role on that. I think just with the makeup of it, obviously Taves is up the middle with that group. And then Taylor Radish is a guy that I think will be a better scorer than Khrushchev, pure scorer, but he's not going to do some of the little intangible things. I know he's got a little bit bigger frame, but he's not going to be as creative, right? In terms of, setting up and playmaking and stuff. It's get the puck on my fucking stick and I'm going to crank it, past the goalie's glove and we're going to score here. But he needs the kind of, guys around him. So when Philip Khrushchev helps drive that along with Taves there, that second line does a whole lot better. And you saw that in the game against the Buffalo Sabres, that overtime win that you and Tony were at, Ron. Let's talk about that for a little bit. You and Tony had a little outing at the United Center, saw an overtime win, as I said. Show us the meme. We got to see it. We got to see Tony because you guys had a very nice celebration up there in the 300 level, and that was right at your end, right in front of you guys.
Sure was.
Our guy Tony on tap was pretty damn excited about this one.
He sure was. And the story behind it, Johnny, is we were sitting there celebrating and I threw my arm up and I hit Tony's hat off. So I pick it up. This was in a video. This is a screenshot. I pick up his hat, I put it on his head, and that's how it sat. And then I turned to him and he hadn't moved it. He's just like, yeah. That was great. We went.
I like how he moved a little bit with the celebration without it falling off too, even though it was like like barely sitting on his head, like kind of like sticking upward sideways. That was hilarious.
Barely hanging on. It was a lot of fun. We went with my buddy Zach as well. We had to do a little Tage Thompson watching as well. He's my fantasy hockey potential league winner if I do win my fantasy hockey league this year. I got him in like the second to last round in our draft. It was a hell of a game. And, going back to what we talked about earlier too, Johnny, seeing Seth Jones step up 2 goals, the tire and the winner, as you mentioned, the winner right in front of us there. We were up in good old section 308. Great tickets and great seats, by the way. Definitely a spot I would highly recommend people sitting, and you can get them for a good price too. But yeah, man, it was cool. It was a lot of fun. Love seeing wins at the UC. Game-winning overtime goals are cool and tough, Johnny. And that's what we got to see on Tuesday night in a winner over the Sabres that at the time made it 4 out of 5. And they followed it up nicely against Philadelphia last night with 5 out of 6, man. It's been a lot of fun. Again, OT winners are cool, especially in person. And yeah, we had one hell of a little celebration. That's a Tony on tap meme that's going to live for forever and ever in the infamy of what is on tap Sportsnet, Johnny.
Right, yeah, and you'll be seeing plenty of that, I'm sure, whenever there's big Hawks play, shared via meme at Four Feathers Pod and at OnTap Sportsnet on social media. Make sure you go and follow us there. Ron, a couple 2 last things here, a couple 2 treat things for the end of what to watch. We talked about the goalie situation. Let's talk about the defensemen, specifically some of the young guys. Ian Mitchell had been, kind of like a stretch of healthy scratches. I know he'd played a few of those earlier games at the homestand, then he was scratched. Isaac Phillips was in. He was not in the lineup for that game that you were just talking about that you and Tony were at, but then he was back in, and Isaac Phillips was the odd man out on the blue line for the game against Philadelphia, which, the Blackhawks still won. Ron, thoughts on this whole situation? Because I think Phillips has shown more in his brief time than Ian Mitchell has, and you can make arguments on either side, like Mitchell's not getting enough of an opportunity, or is he not doing enough with his opportunity to warrant even more? People are just saying that should we just, scratch Jack Johnson or Caleb Jones instead and let both of them play? There's a number of ways to go here. I just want your assessment on the situation as a whole.
Yeah, Johnny, I think what it is they're just keeping both guys warm right now and kind of alternating the planning time, because I really think we are going to see at least one trade, maybe 2 from the blue line at the deadline. My hypothesis is somebody like Lou Lamoriello is going to want Jack Johnson at the deadline for a bag of pucks and a 7th round pick. And there's maybe a chance that a guy like that we appreciate here at Four Feathers, that Jake McCabe, if they get the right trade suitor for him, even though he's got more than just this season left on his deal, another guy we could see leave. So I think they're just trying to keep both of them warm, because that's going to be the tryout right after the deadline for both of these guys, because Mitchell and Phillips will be playing, and either playing on a pairing together or maybe getting alternating opportunities in the top four. In my opinion, these are probably the two that are maybe they've identified as they got to fight for a spot, or they really like Phillips and they want to see if he outplays Mitchell. Because Johnny, the way things are going right now, I think they really do like Phillips and they want to see more of him, but they're trying to see what they can get in Ian Mitchell before potentially letting him walk. Because this is a walk year for him. They got to see what they have in him. I mean, Bowman was really a really big Mitchell guy, but based on how things have gone, Johnny, it makes me think that Davidson was one of those that opposed the Mitchell draft pick. And we're, maybe starting to see some of that come to fruition of, hey, you got to either show us something or we're going to let you walk.
Yep. So my hot take on it, Ian Mitchell's cooked. He's done. He's good as gone. I'm sorry. That's just the way that they've been treating him there. It's, maybe partially his fault for, some mistakes that happen when he does get in. And then other things, just they may just not like his player profile. And they have a bunch of up and coming guys that they've drafted highly in recent years. And you're talking about guys that have started at World Juniors, right? All of the defensemen on Canada. You got Kevin Korchinski, you got Ethan Del Mastro. I know those guys are a little bit away. Nolan Allen, you could use a number of examples there. So you're going to have a logjam there. Probably get him some garbage time minutes here. And I say garbage time because he may still do some things well in that time, but regardless of what happens, they're just going to move on from him because that's the natural end with this contract there. So sorry, Ian Mitchell, but that's just how I feel based on watching the whole situation and watching his deployment.
Yeah. And in addition to that, Johnny, only, 1609 in that game against Philadelphia. That's not a lot of minutes. That was least amount of minutes on the team, Johnny. And just really quick here, looking up as a comparison to Phillips and his ice time in that game against the Sabres. Phillips skated 18:33. That was just short of fourth most on the team. So it really does feel like they play very differently when it's Phillips in the game versus Mitchell. Mitchell coming in as the lowest tallying by almost 2 minutes in terms of time on ice behind a guy like Caleb Jones. Phillips actually getting more time than Jones in that game against the Sabres and was like 7 seconds short of what Jack Johnson played for fourth on the team. So very different deployment between the two of them. So just adding some numbers behind your hot take, Johnny. I don't think it's as hot as you might think it is.
Right.
I think I just think you're accurate, my friend.
Yeah, right. It just feels like writing's on the wall type of thing, right,
Yeah,
Ron? I think that's more of what it is there. So, all right, let's move on for what to watch. Last thing, obviously I talked about the back-to-backs here this weekend. Saturday at the Blues, Sunday at home against the Kings. I'll be there for a little Sunday Fun Day action. Gonna be a fun one. And then 3-game Western Canada road trip next week. Maybe a little Hawks after dark there with me and Tony. If you're still up late night, burning the midnight oil run, possibility for something like that. Or maybe we'll just do a Hawks happy hour before one of those since they're later start time. So that's what's coming up for the Hawks. Our final thoughts here as we get to this. We appreciate all of our listeners tuning in here to season 4, episode 11 of the Four Feathers podcast. Before we close it down, our final thoughts, Ron. This is a appreciation rant for the Italian beef at the United Center. Usually when you go to a stadium, ballpark, arena, concert venue, wherever you're going, the food there is just something in sustenance, right? To kind of maybe soak up some of the beer. It doesn't really matter how it tastes. Maybe the hot dogs, it's not terrible, but it's not like, over the top, like great. The Italian beef, sure, I've had some restaurants that have had maybe a little bit better beef, but my God, for a sports venue, the Italian beef there is excellent. Hot giardiniera is hot. They pile it on, and it's the au jus, the gravy with it is excellent as well, and it makes it, just you get the perfect consistency throughout, and it was a great treat. That was the best part of my game Saturday night when I went there because the Blackhawks goalies couldn't stop a beach ball. Obviously, evidenced by the Kraken putting up 6 in the opening frame there. So that was the best part of my Saturday night. Thank you, United Center Italian Beef, for making it that way.
Oh, Johnny, you're making me hungry. I think the next time we have a Four Feathers night at the UC, I'm gonna have to partake in the Italian beef with you. You've got me excited for it.
It's good, man. Like I said, I'd love to hear if someone disagrees. If you think it's like trash, or if I'm just like overrating it, let me know. But for whatever reason, it's always hit the spot for me.
I think we have a Four Feathers on tap eats collaboration on our hands here with the UC Italian beef, Johnny. So something people are going to have to keep an eye out here for the future. But speaking of last thoughts, Johnny, I've got two of them for you real quick. The Tage Thompson anytime goal scorer was absolutely never a doubt, but all of my betting horrors at Tuesday night while in person, we had first goal scorer for the Blackhawks, I believe. Oh, I don't remember who I took. I don't even think I took a Blackhawk, actually, now that I think about it. I think it was Alex Tuck and good old Gergensens were my two picks for first goal scorer of the game. Yeah, trying to hit big. But the Tage Thompson anytime was a no doubter there, Johnny. And then just quickly, a little bit of a broadcasting story, two short ones here. I have used the term understanding the assignment, like the TikTok trend, in a broadcast before, and it gets a really good pop out of the younger crowd, but I'm sure there was a lot of people that were just like, yeah, that's a good call in football to say he understood his assignment on the field. You know what I mean?
They don't know the full backstory. Yeah.
And interpretation. Yeah. Again, just going back to our discussions with Vosters.
Yeah,
also, too, my buddy Zach, who actually went to the game with Tony and I on Tuesday night, used to do when I was color commentating for the football games all the time. He would give me like a list of words and phrases I had to incorporate into my broadcasts. A lot of fun, first off, especially when you have to figure out how to incorporate big boss pig toss and tight end tap dance into your broadcast call.
You better hope the tight end gets enough targets for you to bring that one in.
Hey, he did, and it worked out well. He got clobbered by the linebacker and dropped the ball, and I said, oh, he got absolutely smacked, and there's no tight end tap dance occurring today in the middle of the field. You just got to play it on the fly, Johnny. It's a lot of fun, but just a fun little broadcast story. It's something I enjoy doing. I'm not big time by any means, but it's just fun, and it's something I'm very passionate about. So those are my final thoughts. Another great episode of Four Feathers with you, Mr. Johnny Noddy, talking.
Yeah, Ron, it said multiple times. I appreciate you sharing your experience there. It's good to get the different perspectives, especially people have some experience in the field that we are dissecting and breaking down there. So, Ron, it was great to be back on the mic with you. Listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you go subscribe on Tap Sportsnet on YouTube so you don't miss a future show. You can check out all of our news and updates and analysis and article form at ontapsportsnet.com and all of our other fun content, social media, at Four Feathers Pod and at On Tap Sportsnet. That'll do it for this episode of the Four Feathers Podcast. Ron, happy Friday night.
Happy Friday, Johnny. Detroit sucks.